I call the December 8th meeting of Planning and Zoning to order, please, and let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Secretary, could you please call the roll?
Chairwoman Spidell,
Yes, ma'am.
Vice Chairman Richardson,
Here.
Secretary Grant,
Here.
Member Porter,
Here.
Member Rice,
Here.
Member Aton,
Here.
Member Riley, Alternate Member Faison,
Here.
Alternate Member Childs.
Here.
Mr. Childs, I'm going to ask you to take the place for Ms. Riley tonight.
All right.
That's a hard person to take a
Thank you, Chairwoman.
place for, but if you will be that alternative, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Call for an approval of the minutes, please. Call for approval of the minutes, please.
I
I move the minutes be approved.
A second.
Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Nope. Okay. May I have the notice of quasi-judicial procedures, please, from the council?
Yes, ma'am. For the meeting, all persons who anticipate speaking on any public hearing item must fill out an oath card to be heard on that agenda item and sign the oath contained thereon. These cards are located on the table outside of the doors of this room and may be obtained from the recording secretary. This meeting will be conducted in accordance to the procedures adopted in Resolution Number 24-1997. Those speaking in favor of a request will be heard first, those opposed will be heard second, and those who wish to make a public comment on the item will speak third. The applicant may make a brief rebuttal if necessary. A representative from either side, for or against, may cross-examine a witness. Anyone who speaks is considered a witness. If you have photographs, sketches, or documents that you desire for the commission to consider, they must be submitted into evidence and will be retained by the city. Please submit such exhibits to the recording secretary. For this agenda, the first item, the CUP for a child care facility, is quasi-judicial. The quasi-judicial confirmation procedures. The following items are subject to quasi-judicial rules of procedure. Anyone wishing to speak on any of these items must first sign a public hearing agenda card and sign the oath contained thereon. Those speaking in favor of a request will be heard first. If you have photographs, sketches, or documents that you desire for the planning and zoning to consider, they must be submitted into evidence and will be retained by the city. Submit these exhibits to the recording secretary.
Thank you so much. I think that each of us have a Form 8B, a need to disclose communication and or a substance of contact from Mr. Rice. Does everyone have that Form 8B? Yes? Yes? Yes. Thank you very much. Okay. Is there anyone else who needs to? Yes, sir.
Quick, on that, do I need to read it into the record at the time of the?
You can, at that agenda item, if you'd like to discuss that then or now, either or.
Okay, it just, the form says I'm supposed to read it.
You
So-
can do that now or at the time
Okay,
the agenda
I'll do it
item's
now
called.
since it's already been brought up.
Okay.
Before you is a Form 8B. I have a conflict of interest with the Tranquility Bay item tonight. And as indicated on this form, I have a third-party construction inspection contract through Underwood Construction, and I'm a sub to ML Underwood. But they have a direct contract with the Tranquility Bay owner, so I just want to disclose that. I will not be voting on that item tonight, but according to this form, I'm allowed to participate in the discussion. So I'll exercise that right.
Thank you, Mr. Rice.
Okay.
And for membership, that involves item 9B. And put that aside for your information. Staff. New business, please. Is that you, Mr. Ford?
That is me. I'm not used to this, as you know.
We're not
Most of you
used to
don't
you.
know me. My name is Tim Ford. I'm the redevelopment planner for the city. and I was asked to do this case because it's in the downtown. On page 8 of 68 of your packet, the applicant is requesting a conditional use permit to locate a child care facility at 213 South Palm Avenue within the existing education building at the First Methodist Church campus. Property zoned downtown mixed use, and in the downtown sub-district. Section 28-110 of the Land Development Regulations requires child care facilities to obtain a conditional use permit in the DMU downtown district. The site was previously used as a child care preschool for over 30 years prior to discontinuing operations at the site in 2018. Per the submitted application and plans, the applicant proposes to utilize the existing site as is. The recommendation or recommended action is staff recommends approval of CUP 9-2021 to allow a child care facility at 213 South Palm Avenue within the downtown subdistrict of the downtown mixed-use zoning district. I'd be glad to try to answer any questions. The applicant, Sherry Dunbar of Connection Kids, is here in the audience as well.
Clerk, are there any cards on this item?
Yes, Sherry Dunbar.
Ms. Dunbar?
Yeah, go to the podium and state your name.
Hi, good evening. My name is Sherry Dunbar, and I currently own Connection Kids. Did you have any questions, or do you want me to go on and?
I want you to explain.
Okay,
Connection Kids.
okay.
And are you then contracting with a Methodist church?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and
Yes.
so tell us about your operation.
Okay, currently I operate off of Dairy Road at St. Andrew Methodist Church. We've been there 12 years. I am the owner and director. We right now have children ages 1 through 13. We are looking to expand our business to help our community. We have the need, we get calls continually, day after day, to grow and offer more care for children ages infant through age 13.
Are you going to have infants at this facility?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, up to 0 to 13?
It would be 6 weeks through age 13. We offer transportation before and after school care. We have a VBK program. We offer summer camp. We have in-service days for the days that our public schools are closed. And there is a big need as our community is growing.
Is this a second one of your operations, and you're going to stay with the other church
No,
also?
ma'am, I will move the whole.
You're just moving?
Yes.
You're just moving?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Are you moving in good stead? Are people,
Yes.
okay.
Yes, everybody's excited about it, the families and my staff, a lot of them are here behind me. And this, again, is going to help us grow and offer care for all the families that need it.
Excellent. What kind of questions do commissioners have, please? Yes, sir.
Does the state regulate how many students are allowed in each classroom?
Oh, absolutely. I'm also under the Department of Children and Families, yes.
I thought they were. I just want to clarify.
Absolutely, yes, yes. They have to do final inspections and give me all the approvals. Mhm.
Okay. Staff, I have a couple questions for you real quick then. Or do you want to hear the rest of the public hearing first before I ask staff questions?
Whatever. If you need them
Okay.
now, ask.
I don't need them, but do you know how many students were in the old school?
Unfortunately, I do not. That's
Okay.
before my time.
Okay, and then I'm going to hold the rest of my questions for staff after I hear the rest of the public hearing.
How many do you anticipate? Just a guesstimate?
A guesstimate would be 175. I am currently licensed for 109.
And you're going to use that wing of the church that has been committed to classrooms and Sunday school rooms, and there's, I think, isn't there a auditorium in the middle of that building for the
There
church?
is. I'm currently under a lease where I would strictly lease the education building.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay. And is there enough room for that many people?
Yes, yes, it's
Oh.
approximately 10,000 square feet, so there's several classrooms, and we're very excited about having the space.
And this sounds like a 365, almost a 365-day operation. Is that
Yes,
correct?
yes. We shut
Okay.
down 1 week at Christmas time.
I think the only question I wanted to know is that you have an excellent play area. You still have that play area, don't you, that's fenced across the street?
I will be installing a new 6-foot commercial fence, and all of that has been submitted as well. And then we will be moving our playground there.
And isn't that all regulated by the state anyway?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And what about traffic going down? Which street is that? Is that?
Palm
is that
Avenue.
Palm Avenue, yes,
Okay.
yes.
So what kind of, are you going to require a flashing light there? Are you going to have a crosswalk there to move from one building to the play area?
Yes, we would have a crosswalk. There is currently 1 crosswalk right now, and then I have submitted all the paperwork for the traffic control to the city
Okay.
with
And
2 options.
now, does the city control that? Maybe this is a question to staff. Does the city control the traffic, or is that a Department of Transportation?
Well, this is on a local street, Palm Avenue, so it would be through the city and Public Works. But they have reviewed their plan of traffic management. And so our city engineer and our Public Works Department did not see any issues with what they're proposing.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Well, thank you for what you're doing. Are you familiar with the hub zone?
The hub zone, no, I'm not.
Historically underutilized business zone.
Okay,
Okay, if I'm not mistaken, staff, this school is in a hub zone, correct?
That is my understanding, yes.
Okay, so in the past, there have been tax credits being given to people who utilize businesses in hub zones. So for example, if a business in a hub zone hires an individual who lives in a hub zone, and that individual places their children in a daycare in the hub zone, all are eligible for tax credits. Were you aware of that?
no, I was not.
Staff, am I mistakenly saying this incorrectly?
I'm not real familiar with the hub zone requirements. That's usually through the economic development, but yes, that is one of the benefits of being in a hub zone. It also gives you preferential treatment in federal government contracts. So particularly, it's been of interest to those companies wanting to do business with NASA and/or the Air Force and the Armed Forces.
So congratulations on picking a location such as that. You can use that as one of the things to attract more folks there, and also
Okay.
let businesses in the area know that you're there and that there's a
Absolutely.
potential benefit to all who utilize your services.
Okay, well, great.
Okay.
That's even better. Thank you.
Mr. Faison, does this lovely lady have your card?
I need your card.
Seriously? Okay, you didn't know that?
No, I did not.
I didn't know it either.
That's
Okay.
great.
Okay, very good. Nice, thanks for adding that. What additional questions do we have? None whatsoever? 0 to 13, and you have no questions for these people? This woman's a hero. Okay. Yeah, it's true, okay. Okay. Did you have any additional
Of
comment?
staff, but I don't know if we're closing the public hearing yet.
Okay, do we have, thank you so much, and if there's another
Okay.
question, can we ask you to come back up?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for your time.
Is there any other card on this item, please?
No.
Okay. So, Mr. Rice?
Staff. I lost my place, hold on. Let me go back to where my notes are. How much does it cost to do a conditional use permit in downtown? What was the fee on this?
I think it's on the application, but it's approximately $1,500, I believe,
$1,500?
plus the advertising fees.
So that's
So,
1750,
so
1800.
I think since she paid the fee, she could probably tell you that it's around $1,700, $1,800.
How long did it take to process this application?
In what way?
The
Just
application
from
was,
the time the application came in to
it
this
was,
hearing?
it was
How long did
submitted
take to
October
process?
14th.
I'm sorry?
It was submitted October 14th, so
October
less than 2
14th.
months to now,
Okay.
but
Right.
it still
Right.
needs to go through December
We-
14th council hearing.
Right. And
Basically 2 months.
And we could have done sooner, but this needs to go to the CRA.
Okay.
So we timed it so that it would go to your board and then on the 14th to the CRA and city council on the same night, so that we had it, all together, so.
And the reason I ask these questions, I really don't have a problem with the application at all, okay? Where I struggle a little bit is I'm dealing with a site that had 30 years of being a school, okay? And I think by code, and correct me if I'm wrong, once that use ceases for 6 months, then the CUP goes away. Is that a correct statement?
That is my understanding.
Okay. But yet it was a school for 30 years. In the staff analysis, nothing changed on this site, nothing. And to make an applicant pay $1,800, wait 2 months, just doesn't seem user-friendly as a city that we're trying to do the right thing. So after this motion clears up, I'm gonna make another motion.
Okay. The other thing is there has been a change in zoning since the previous daycare school was operating there. It used to be zoned CB, Central Business District, and then it was changed to the DMU. In the DMU, it lists preschools and child care centers as a conditional use. And since it was discontinued since 2018, I feel your angst,
No,
and
I'm not criticizing
yeah.
staff that they didn't follow the rules in this case
Right, I
at all.
understand.
I'm just saying we need to probably change the rules, so once we dispose of this, I'm gonna make a second motion. I just want to know those facts first before I move on. So I'm done with my discussion.
Okay, I need to call for a motion for this
No,
agenda.
I have a question
Yes, sir.
or a comment. The city changed the zoning, not First Methodist, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so
Back in
they didn't ask for
2010.
change themselves. It was basically, since the zoning classification changed and a new one came about, they are automatically rezoned.
Was your question answered? Okay. I would like to comment that Mr. Rice or to staff, we can suggest something to council, but we can't legislate.
No, and I'm gonna make a recommendation to council
Okay. that would-
after
that
we
would be
dispose
fine.
of this item.
Perfect, okay. Again, I call for a motion on the agenda item 9A.
I would move that we recommend approval, item 9A, child care facilities.
Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Second it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Vice Chairman Richardson,
Yes.
Member Porter,
Yes.
Member Childs,
Yes.
Member Aton,
Yes.
Secretary Grant,
Yes.
Member Rice,
Yes.
Chairwoman Spidel.
Yes. This petition passes unanimously. Thank you for your time. Mr. Rice, do you have something further to say on this then?
Well,
A suggestion to
it's
council?
not about this particular CUP, but I would like to make a recommendation to city council on how to proceed when you have like scenarios. And in this case, my motion will be that if a CUP for the same use is less than 5 years from the last known use, should not require a CUP, but should be evaluated by staff for compliance with the LDRs and special use requirements. If the site is found not to be in compliance with any of the requirements during the staff review, the CUP process shall then be required. But other than that, it's a staff approval without a CUP fee. It might have a review fee, but it will not have a CUP fee. So that's my recommendation, that we change the process for a scenario that's really this easy.
That would be citywide, not specific to DMU,
That
is
is
that correct?
correct. I'm talking about CUPs under this same scenario with nothing is changing. The use might be a little older than 6 months, but most permits and most things with permitting with St. John's, the DEP, when you get an approval, they're good for 5 years. So I'm saying 5 years from the date the last use was, if the use comes in within the 5 years, that you can look at this process differently, is what I'm asking. So that's my motion.
Do we have a second on that? No second?
Can we have can we have a discussion? Well, all right, I'll second it, but.
You'll
go ahead.
second it?
Yeah.
Okay, now can we discuss it? Go ahead, Mr. Schultz.
Would the fees be drastically different, I guess, and is there an estimate you could give that the fees would be different, I guess? Like if it's just a review, because there's still fees, right? But the fees would be different because it's not like a full-on review or whatever.
Well, you're not gonna
right?
have to advertise it, okay?
You won't have to-
You're not gonna have to pay an application fee, because the application fee does offset a staff review, but it doesn't go to P and Z, it doesn't go to city council.
Just
And
it's
so the fees are
administrative.
probably gonna be much reduced, okay?
That would have to be
Based on that review.
researched and presented. If council wanted to move forward, we'd have to come up with a process.
That's correct.
And procedures and a fee structure, if any fee were to be.
And this
Okay,
is just a
yeah,
recommendation
no,
to
yeah.
city council to
Yeah, no, it makes
change
sense,
the
though.
way we
I
do
just-
business under this scenario.
Yeah, I just was curious. All right, yeah.
Additional, Mr. Richardson?
I understand what you're saying, but I think it's kind of premature at this point, because we should discuss that with staff, because I would wholeheartedly support something for this if they're, child care service or something like that. But I think we got to really think about this. And like, for example, those adult living facilities, one has expired, and would approve a second CUP for that. I think we better consider that, and maybe the staff can put it on our next agenda.
Just keep in mind, what I said was that if nothing had changed, okay, if all the conditions and all the requirements in the LDRs are still met under the same scenario,
If ownership changes,
that's just ownership. But that has nothing.
no, I would think we need to consider it completely.
Could you explain the 5-year thing again?
Yeah, the reason I picked 5 years is because it's in line with a lot of permitting processes with St. John's, the Army Corps, DOT. When you receive an approval, those approvals are typically good for 5 years. The city has a lot of different timeframes on a lot of different approvals, like site plan approval is only good for 1 year, okay? And then and if you have an inspection, then you can extend it. But if you don't have that inspection, you can't even extend that. So I'm just trying to come in line, and I think 5 years is a reasonable time frame. This one, using this as an example, it's only been 3 years since the operation ceased before, okay? So it would fall under this. And after 5 years, then it needs to be looked at just as all-encompassing to the surrounding areas and how much of the surrounding area has changed in 5 years. And that's why I picked 5 years, because that seemed like a reasonable time frame. But 6 months seemed unreasonable, okay, for that scenario.
I have another question of
I
staff.
agree, and I think an injustice has been done in this part, but I'm in agreement with Mr. Richardson here. We should think about this for just a tiny bit, maybe have consult with staff a little bit.
Mr. Richardson, do you
There
have-
was, council considered changes in the development fees, I think at their last meeting. Would this have changed the fee?
I believe that you're referring to the codification of the application fee ordinance, and that wasn't changing any amounts. It was moving the location where they were found. But the process for amending a CUP permit fee would be related to the item you're discussing. But I think just for everyone to get on the same page, the request that Member Rice has made is to ask council to look at something, which would
Come back to
result
here.
in the next step being the council would ask staff to produce a report of advisability on that item. If council is inclined to follow in that direction, they could say yes or they could say no to that, but that wouldn't automatically result in a decision by council changing the process.
And all it would do is start the process that any code change would come back to P and Z, because that's the process, before it went back to city council. So it's not like I'm saying, make the changes without coming back to P and Z. I'm just saying, let's get advisability to address this topic under this type of scenario, so we don't make other people do what this young lady had to do.
You know, one of the things that I think is germane to this conversation is, number one, ownership has changed. So that argument kind of doesn't preside here. Zoning has changed, so that argument doesn't preside here. Also, when you mention Corps of Engineers and St. John's as examples, they have long-term commitments. And so 5 years to them isn't such a big deal. But in the case here where ownership can change sometimes every 6 months, year to year, it's a little bit different. And the city of Titusville does have to make money, and I'm sorry that you had to pay those fees. I mean, it sucks. Trust me, I know. As an entrepreneur, I understand that fees kick us in the teeth, but at the same time, it also helps keep our city running. And so, just one of the things I just want to just be, to keep mindful. Number one is that ownership has changed here in this area, as well as zoning. And so, once those things have changed, we have a new set of circumstances.
Thank you. Staff, does this need to be a motion?
We've had a motion and a second with discussion.
Okay, and then we need to call for a vote on this? Thank you. Could the clerk do a roll call, please?
Secretary Grant,
Absolutely.
Member Childs,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Richardson,
No.
Member Rice,
Yes.
Member Porter,
Yes.
Member Aton,
Yes.
Chairwoman Spidel.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you for what you're doing and giving to the community. We'll see you in the neighborhood.
Okay.
Good luck. Best wishes, and to your staff, too.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ford.
Don't forget the hub zone.
Chairwoman?
Yes, ma'am.
Since Member Rice is going to be abstaining, are you going to appoint alternate Member Faison to fill in for him?
I thought, so I need another alternative. Okay, Mr. Faison, would you now become a commissioner for this particular part of the agenda, sir?
I think so.
Thank you. There are rules of behavior, though, so please. Okay, let's go to item number 9B, after the security has cleared the noise, I'm funny about this hall noise. It is. We usually have security out there. Now, these people don't look like they need much security, but they're chit-chatting, as I say to my freshmen. Are you chit-chatting? Okay, the next, staff, could you present, Eddie, it's nice to have you back at the table, sir. Could you present the next item?
Yes, ma'am, thank you. So this item begins on page 27 of 68, and I'll read the summary. The applicant, Gary Allen Jr., on behalf of Sunbelt Titusville Investments, LLC, and Carolina Holdings II, LLC owners, is requesting the approval of the Second Amendment to the Tranquility Development Agreement. The development agreement was approved in 2017 to allow a mixed-use development with 2,404 residential units, approximately 33 acres of commercial uses, and 100 acres of open space and recreation uses. The property is designed with RMU and conservation land uses and is zoned RMU and open space and recreation. The amended language requests several changes be made to the development agreement and associated master plan as described below. So there's 3 amendments being proposed tonight. The first is in section 1, which states that all the overall density of the internal parcels may be adjusted so long as the total density of the project is not increased and the zoning density is not exceeded for any of the individual parcels as set forth in the code and comp plan. Section 2 extends the time for the developer to complete an initial assessment of a site for a future fire station to be completed within 2 years after the effective date of the amendment, or 6 months after notification by the city of its intent to proceed with construction of the fire station, whichever comes first. And the last amendment is to the master plan, which amends, amends parcel 5 of the master plan to delete a proposed layout for the subdivision, and amends the master plan data table to eliminate the columns titled proposed number of units and proposed density units per acre, and correcting the allowed density units per acre shown for the RMU 200 single-family parcels to be consistent with the maximum density permitted under the comprehensive plan. Staff's analysis finds that the proposed amendments are consistent with the comprehensive plan and land development regulations. However, staff is concerned with the transfer of multifamily units into single-family units. Approving this transfer could be used as the basis for future requests to gradually erode the multifamily parcels. The multifamily parcels are important to maintaining a mixed-use development. The staff recommends approving the transfer of existing single-family units from Parcel 5 to Parcel 1 instead. In addition, the staff recommends that a column be maintained on the master plan data table that illustrates how the residential units will be dispersed between the parcels. Additionally, I have two page numbers I wanted to point you to. The first is page 30 of 68, and that lays out the staff's analysis for each of the amendments. So there's section 1, section 2, and the master plan. Those are the 3 changes. And then the second page I wanted to point you to is page 40 of 68, which is the amended master plan that's being proposed tonight as well. The applicant's here as well, so if you have any questions, you can ask either staff or the applicant.
Are there cards for this presentation, please?
Yes, Gary Allen.
Mr. Allen? How are you this evening?
Great, how are you?
I'm great, too.
Good. So
Thank you for coming.
thanks for having me. Gary Allen Jr., 9179 The Lane, Naples, Florida. I guess here to answer any questions or address the staff comments. I don't know if I should do that now or wait until, I guess, wait for your questions or.
Let's have a mixed presentation. Do you have anything to add to staff's presentation on the changes within each section?
Well, I guess that I would say that staff in their report brought up that they were concerned about transferring the multifamily to single family, that it would gradually erode and take away from like the RMU, the intent of the being a mixed use development, and that's not our intent at all. The density is very important to us and the value of the property in our eyes. So if you were to try to change a bunch of it to single family, you would not be able to realize the density and therefore devalue your land.
Am I incorrect to say that the concerns of staff are on future developments and not this?
So the
When
request.
staff recommends that, were you thinking not specifically for this, but for future?
No, ma'am. So the request is to move some additional units from other phases to the phase, the next single-family phase, which is, looking at page 40 again, the master plan, that northwest corner of the property along US 1. It says in the box there's a number 1, it says single-family residential.
Mm-hmm.
So the applicant's requesting to go through the subdivision process and provide a layout of the units on the site for just that section 1. But they are requesting additional units from other sections of the total development to be added. And so the request or the recommendation from staff is that to allow that flexibility, the staff is concerned that if you take the units from the total number of units available to the entire development and you allow that to happen, transfer multifamily units into the single-family residential subdivision, that you're now reducing the economic feasibility of the multifamily. Maybe not with this request, but it sets precedent that could eventually cause that to happen. And so our request would be, or our recommendation to you tonight is to allow that flexibility to transfer units internally within the development, but to use some existing single-family units to transfer into that single-family residential parcel at the northwest corner.
Are you okay with that?
No, I think that defeats the purpose of, I think it defeats the purpose of what we're intending to do. One, I guess that, the property, it's RMU, and so it has, RMU 100, 200, 300, 400. Well, the only, single family is only allowed in RMU 200, and I would say 90% of the remaining property is all RMU 3 or 400. So, the idea of this being some kind of, even if you said that, that we wanted to devalue our land and do that, we wouldn't be able to, because it's RMU 3 and 400 as it sits. And so, in the section that we're talking about, there was originally 59 lots that were 65 foot wide. So, in talking with builders who want to buy that section, they prefer a 50-foot product. So we were taking, when you reduce the width of the lots, then and on the same amount of land, then you can get approximately 70 some lots. We haven't submitted our site plan yet, but I think it's 72 or so. It'll be within one or two of that.
So since you've been here, so one of the things that I've heard you say often was that that's not your intent. So one of the things that you haven't done yet is make that intent clear. And so we don't quite know what you're driving at.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. But what's driving the need, and which you've just now stated, but prior to saying that, I don't think we were clear on why you're looking to change the density. So thank you for that clarification. But multifamily units here in the city are at a premium. Just myself, just this week, I've been running around looking for a one-bedroom here in the city of Titusville, and going to find out, number one, there are no one-bedrooms. Now, we're just talking multifamily units. We're talking about the city of Titusville. So right now, a one-bedroom in the city of Titusville goes for about $900. And so we need multifamily units desperately in this area, especially those that are affordable. Affordable housing is at a premium here in the city of Titusville. So when you're looking at reducing the density, or excuse me, increasing the density by decreasing the frontage from 65 to 50, you guys are looking at putting more single-family homes, correct?
Yeah, it would be, I think the variance is maybe 20. So, I mean, the total project is 2,404 units, and yeah, it's 20 lots is what we're talking about.
So again, so the intent here is to decrease the frontage from 65. What you're asking is decrease the frontage from 65 to 50 by allowing us to change the density to allow more units. Is that what you're asking?
No. I mean, we're not asking to, we're not submitting a site plan.
Okay.
We're talking about the development agreement. And so in the development agreement, it said that, in the sections that are RMU 200, there was a table, which I'm sure is, part of the packet, or I've got copies also if somebody wants one. But it says that there's, on this parcel, there's, 59 units. On this parcel, there's however many units, 200 units. And so, we're taking 20 units from a multifamily parcel and moving it to the single family is what, I guess, the intent of what we're doing.
Okay, so decreasing the number of multifamily units.
Yeah, I guess decreasing the number of multifamily units, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Did he answer your question, Mr. Faison?
He did. So again, so from what I gather from what he just said, I want to repeat this back to you. So there are a number of multifamily units. You would like to take those 20 from the multifamily and make those single family.
Yeah.
Okay, so which then is decreasing the number of multifamilies in the city of Titusville.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you
I
for that
agree.
clarification.
Yeah.
Mr. Rice?
Yeah, although I can't vote on it, I can have a discussion on it. I just want to get a few facts out. First of all, how old is this developer's agreement?
I think it predates us, probably 15 years or so.
Okay. Do you think market conditions have changed in 15 years?
Yes, they have.
Okay. So it's probably not unreasonable to think that the marketplace sort of dictates number of multifamily, number of single family, or what have you, and you need that flexibility to be able to target the marketplace to make your project successful, which everyone wants your project to be successful. I will also say that I have no game in this redesign or engineering or any of these. I'm not doing any of the engineering at all, okay? I'm just an inspection services on a contractor that's in his field working right now. Staff, and I'm just trying to get clear in my mind, and so the rest of my fellow commissioners have land use number 120.2 basically says that this developer's agreement requires to have a minimum of 3 uses. And then in 21.20.3, it says in those 3 uses, no one use can be more than 50% of a use. Okay? So there's no way for single-family homes to take more than 50% of the use based on acreage. That's what it says. Okay? Along with what Mr. Allen said with the RMU's already designated. He's not changing any of the rezoning on there, so whatever's in there. Now, the only thing that matters in my mind, is that he has a maximum density that he's allowed on this development. He cannot exceed that, okay? So if he expands something over here, okay, then it does have to come from somewhere else. It could come from another single-family pod. Maybe the market changes and this pod needs to be 75-foot lots, not 65-foot lots, okay? That currently is, and I don't know what your lot ratios are, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's coming from the multifamily. So I think those are important. One, you got to be able to be flexible with something that's 15 years old on the marketplace and what's happening in the market, and to hold someone to something that was created 15 years ago without having some flexibility in it just doesn't seem right to me. So I just want to share that with you all, and please govern yourself accordingly.
Staff have a
Yes.
rebuttal?
Yes, sir, Mr. Antoine.
I'm sorry.
So,
That's okay.
let me ask a question a different way. I realize that the development agreement prohibits it, but I get that your goal is not really to reduce the number of multifamily, but the only way you can narrow the single family is to take those units away. If we said, or if the development agreement wasn't worded the way it was, you could leave the number of multifamily the way it is, the number of multifamily units the way they were, and just add additional single families, but because of the overall calculation, you're not able to do that. So that's the only reason, really, that the multifamily number is getting reduced.
Yes, sir.
Would be financially beneficial for you to have as much multifamily as you had originally planned, or as calculated here.
Yeah, if we could have the 20 units, so our density cap is 2404, but if it was 2424, then we wouldn't, I guess it wouldn't be the same scenario.
Who wants to talk? Oh, Chelsea,
Hi.
thank you.
I wanted to point out something from the staff report to make sure everyone understands how the city's position is on the suggestion for the changes to the data table on the bottom corner of the map on page 40. But before we look at that, I'm reading from page 30 into 31. At the very bottom, last paragraph, the staff comments, the suggestion that was made by the planning staff is that for the map that you see on page 40, the prior version that's currently in effect for the development was approved with particular columns that are called proposed number of units and proposed density units per acre. And the city suggests that rather than eliminating both, one of those be retained. And so I'd like to ask the applicant if he's considered keeping one of those two proposed deleted columns. such as the proposed density units per acre?
So I think that we wouldn't necessarily have a problem with that to the extent that it doesn't require us to continuously, because the very first item that we're talking about is changing the word parcel to project, which when you read through the entirety of that sentence, it's incoherent as it's written. So changing the word parcel to project allows you to move density amongst parcels. And if you have a table that says proposed number in parcel, I mean, we can just pick one parcel, whichever one.
It doesn't say parcel, it just says,
Or tract, I mean.
it just says proposed density units per acre. That's the title of the column. See,
What
Yeah.
page are you on in the agenda?
Yeah.
31.
Are you on
31?
40?
This is the map that was previously approved.
No, that's on 40, correct?
I just want to make sure I'm on the right page.
31 at the bottom.
31 at the bottom?
31,
I think it, no.
It's reading
I
from
think I think
the
it's
bottom of
40.
page 30 into 31.
Okay, okay. So it's that table, okay.
So which one were you saying that you wanted to leave? The proposed density?
The staff report states currently the proposed density units per acre depicted in the RMU 200 parcels is, that's something else, I'm sorry. The elimination of the columns labeled proposed number of units and proposed density units per acre allows the developer more flexibility. Staff is concerned that the elimination of the columns will allow the developer to transfer a significant number of multifamily residential units into single-family lots, thus changing the mixed-use character of the development. Staff's recommendation is that at least one of the columns be maintained that illustrates how the residential units will be distributed among the parcels.
Yeah, so I think that it kind of goes hand in hand. If you're moving density from, parcel 7 to parcel 8, then the proposed density units per acre would change or would be inconsistent. So they'd both be wrong. If you move any units from one parcel to the other, then they would both be wrong, and then it would be another 90-day process of development agreement amendment.
Well, it's also my understanding that the max density that's allowed within these districts, what you're proposing is not near that max density. So as long as there's the density column showing that, it implies that there's an intent to keep that mixed-use character without impacting your development.
So I guess what maybe I'm not understanding, because what I'm looking at is proposed number of units. So for parcel number 1, it says proposed number of units 59, and so it says proposed density units per acre 3.3. And you're saying that you want to maintain one or both of those columns? Is that accurate?
That's how the staff report reads, and I hear Eddie saying that's interpreted as a maximum density.
Well, there's a, there's another column that's called allowed density units per acre, and that's the maximum. So if you just follow on parcel 1, for instance, the allowed density units per acre is 12. The proposed is 3.3, and the proposed number of units is 59. But that's kind of part of the problem, kind of the whole reason that we're here is because we want, we want to have 20 units on, so it's, 72 or 74 units instead of 59. And so whenever we talked with Peggy about that, it was said, well, the table here says 59, so you have to have a development agreement amendment if it's anything but that. So that's kind of, I guess our concern is if we're changing the word parcel to project, then that is to enable us to have flexibility to move units from one parcel to the other.
Correct.
But then that's going to make the table wrong if you leave those columns.
So you tried to get 72 units, is what you're trying to get?
Yeah, I think, he hasn't submitted the plan, but I think it was 72, 74.
Well, I'm sure a single-family home still makes more money than multifamily. So the more single-family that you build, the more money the project makes.
Well, I think that if acreage wasn't a thing, then that would be correct, but I think that, single family takes up a lot more land, so like on a, we have only a certain amount, so, when we get when you can get, however many units per acre on a multifamily, even though on a per unit basis it might be less, it's still more on a per acre basis.
Okay.
That's not the same ones on page 4.
No, it's not. So I just was doing a quick calculation, so you're proposing going from 3.3, and when I calculate 72 units in 1807, you're going to 3.98. So
Yeah, and I think the maximum allowed is.
is 12, so
Yeah,
you're
well-
still well below what would normally be allowed if you didn't even have a developer's agreement.
Yeah.
That's actually a mistake, and that's referenced on page 31. It should be 6.7.
I'm sorry?
But nonetheless, the point's
Sure,
correct,
yeah. The number 12 is an error on that chart.
Oh, it is?
And on page 31, there is a paragraph describing that number should be 6.7.
6.7, not 12.
Right.
Okay, but still, we're still at 3.98, so he's not busting at all the allowed density. He's still well under the code requirement, because that would be a problem if he was above the code requirement.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Allen, I need you to summarize the positives and negatives. Because you're against this, and so what are the negatives again, please?
Well, I'm for my,
I know that you're for what you're for, but you're not for what the staff is recommending. Is that correct?
yes, ma'am.
Okay, can you just review that quickly?
So the staff's concern was that changing multifamily, that this would be setting a precedence for changing multifamily to single family, which would erode the single family or the multi-use character of the subdivision, right? And so we cannot, number one, we don't want to do that.
Tell
No,
me
but-
why, please.
Because we would make less money. I think.
Okay. That's what I'm asking you to say. Thanks.
And I think.
Why else?
And also that if you look at the remainder of the undeveloped land, I would say 90% of it, or maybe more, is RMU 3 or 400. Single family is not an allowed use in 3 or 400. So you couldn't do single family there anyway. So you wouldn't be able to do what their concern is, I guess is my point.
Mr. Rice?
Staff, I'm on page 35. There's a chart that says minor modifications and substantial modifications, and it says that substantial modifications can't be done by administrative process, but the minor ones can. And under minor, it says change from multifamily residential to single-family residential is a minor change. So why are we discussing this? Why couldn't staff just say, yes, you can do that because this developer's agreement, the master plan says you can?
That's a good question. On the substantial modification column, the second row is any other modification that affect the area depicted on the development concept plan or the perimeter of the proposed site. And since the parcel within the project is on the northwest corner along US 1, and the adjacent properties to the north, it's technically a substantial modification. That's why we're bringing it to you tonight.
It clearly says it's minor, though. It says, I mean, how do you get around saying
It's in the
a
perimeter.
change from multifamily residential to single-family residential is minor? Doesn't say if it's on US 1 or in the Northwest Territory or wherever it is.
Mhm.
It says it's minor. How do you misconstrue that?
Well, again, because that's adjacent to the perimeter of the property. And so on page 7 of 8, on the right-hand side, substantial modification, the language says if it's affecting the perimeter of the property.
Why, he's not changing the perimeter of the property.
Well,
He's changing the lots within that same pod, but the perimeter of the property is not changing. He's still gonna have to do the landscape buffers that every lot has to do. He's still gonna do everything. That's the perimeter,
mhm.
okay? He's not changing any of that.
Right. Well, staff's position is that this amendment is to the parcel that's adjacent to the perimeter and would be adding units that were not previously described, and so for that reason, we've considered it
So
a
you wanna
substantial
ignore
modification.
this one I pointed out, so you can apply your other one,
Correct.
is what I'm hearing. Okay.
Yeah. Chair,
Yes, sir.
that's a good point. And when you just said it's adjacent to the perimeter, so you're saying it's not the perimeter if it's adjacent to, right? So is this point valid then? I mean, because if you're saying it's adjacent to the perimeter, then you're saying it's not the perimeter. So what's the perimeter? I guess what's the definition of a perimeter then?
So I'll ask the commission to look at page 40 of 68. That's the plan, the proposed amended plan. And so that tract one, that parcel one is this subdivision that's proposed to be amended. And since it's in the corner along the landscape perimeters, along the edges of the property, it's considered to be affecting the perimeter of the property.
But it's not. The property lines aren't changing in that pod. They're staying exactly the same.
Right.
He's just shrinking the number of lots. The internal property lines are gonna change, but it has nothing to do with the perimeter.
It's increasing the density of a parcel adjacent to other surrounding properties.
Okay, I just respectfully disagree that you're ignoring one section of the code, so you can reach out and try to grab another as well, okay?
Mr. Allen, do you feel that buyers of single-family residents do not want to be up next to multifamily? Is that the situation?
You mean in general, or I guess, I'm not sure, you mean like in this particular,
In this particular?
well, I think we're not doing it because we think that single family doesn't want to be next to multifamily. So we're doing it because we have a builder that wants to buy 50-foot lots, and so they're planned at 65. We're shrinking them, which increases the number. So it's not based on, I guess, some other concern, or the concern that you brought up.
And your builder wants 65?
50-foot lots.
50-foot lots?
Yes, ma'am.
Period?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So they're all 50-foot?
Yes, ma'am. Well, I mean, the ones that are on corners and whatnot are pie-shaped and things of that nature. But,
I understand that.
yeah, the standard.
Okay. Additional questions?
Yeah, Chair. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Mr. Charles.
I just want to go back to perimeter, because I'm trying to figure out why in that table then, is it because if anything changes on the perimeter, was the thought behind having that in there, is that if is it how it looks? Is that why they put that in there as a substantial change, is because it would change how it looked from the roads and stuff or something, or?
So I wasn't present when that section of the code was written, but I can imagine that it's because it may have impacts to the adjacent property owners.
Oh, okay, so what they see and what they have, all right, thank you.
This is staff. With Mr. Mark's explanation of what they're intending to do you still have the same concerns?
Yes, we still have the same concerns. I would say it's probably staff's position that the transfer of these units may not be the end of the multi-use conception of the entire project. We're still concerned, and we want to make it clear that by doing this, we want to make sure that it's not setting a precedent to continue to take units from the multifamily section to continue adding to the single-family section.
On what land, though? Like, what land could we possibly do that on?
So currently, you could not, like you said, the other parcels are zoned for multifamily. But if you've taken enough units and then left one of the parcels without enough units, someone may come in and say, without enough units, we need to now change this to single family. And so staff is just concerned with the original concept of this area being multifamily and single family, and again, not creating a precedent to keep down this path. Now, could I summarize real quick the changes, the amendments, because I think that staff and the applicant agree on several of the amendments, and so I just want to make that clear. So for the amendment to section 1, it states that the overall density of the internal parcels may be adjusted so long as the total density of the project is not increased. So as the applicant stated earlier, the language is not coherent as it's currently written, and so we'd like to clarify that and make sure that there is flexibility within the site to transfer units within the development. We think that flexibility is good, and so we'd like to make sure that that's available to the applicant without having to come before you for another amendment. The second section is extending the time for the developer to complete that initial assessment for the fire station. So that was something that the city requested. We requested that that amendment be made because the city is currently reviewing the possibility of taking another fire station on the south side of town that's existing. And so the possibility that there may be 2 fire stations would duplicate services that are not needed, and so we just need time. We're currently reviewing the feasibility of that additional fire station, and so we're asking for that time period to be extended to 2 years instead of 6 months. The master plan amends parcel 5 of the master plan to delete a proposed layout. Again, by deleting the layout, it creates more flexibility if things need to shift during the engineering phase for the development. They don't need to come back and amend the agreement just because the layout of the subdivision has changed. Agree with that flexibility. And then the last piece is just the dealing with the columns that are in the table and this idea that some of the units, staff would prefer that the units come from the existing single-family units as opposed to taking units from the multifamily.
Mr. Anton.
So, if the multifamily continues to erode, does that come back to us, or if these changes would make it that those would not have to come back to us?
I'm sorry.
So your concern is that this sets a precedent for something in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So in the future, does this change? So this one had to come to us to erode multifamily to single family, but it's a relatively very small amount compared to the entire project. If they do come back to do the same thing again, does that come back to us, or does this change allow them to do this again in the future without coming back to us?
So if that change was a minor change, then no, it would be an administrative level change to the developer's
It would be
agreement.
it would have to be a rezone in the RMU, right? You'd have to change the RMU district. So you have to change one of the RMU districts from 300 or 400 to 200 to be able, and so that, I believe, would come back.
So is this section 1 in the northwest corner, is that the only remaining single family?
Yes, yeah, so this is all final platted
Mhm.
here. And then this is what we're talking about now. So the only remaining in RMU 200 is this.
Okay.
So everything else is all 300 or 400. With the exception of, I think there's some 100 that's like this preserve creek area wetlands.
I have a question. I now see there's a lot of high-density multifamily, which is great. Is any of that been reserved for affordable housing?
I don't think that was contemplated in our development agreement, no.
But it wasn't? Okay.
Mr. Richardson.
Yeah, so the big disagreement is your last point. Should we table the item so that you can work with applicant and resolve that issue?
I don't necessarily think that there's a need to table tonight. unless the applicant is asking to table, but I think the board has enough information tonight, unless you feel that there's more information we can be providing.
Are there, Mr. Anton?
So I'm not sure I got my question answered. So it seems that staff's concern is that we're setting a precedent, not so much that the 20 or so lots changing is an issue. So at the time, and Mr. Allen says that's not their intent, but should their intent change and they do want to change, will that come back to us and we can address your concerns at that point? Or does this change kind of give them carte blanche to make those decisions themselves, or, that it wouldn't come back to us? Because it seems like we're denying it for something that we're concerned might happen, that it would seem to me we potentially would get another look at if they did propose something like that in the future, but I don't know that to be the case.
From what I can tell, it would not come back to you unless there was a rezoning associated with it. So if it was one of the multifamily parcels that was being rezoned to a single-family parcel, or a zoning category that only allows or would allow single-family, then it would come to you. But otherwise, if it's anywhere else on the if they are transferring units to another portion, from the multifamily to the single-family, if there is any other areas on the site, then it would not come back to you.
But it does come to staff?
Yeah, for minor modifications, yes.
Okay.
Mr. Rice?
Something I missed, and I think you said it, and I think you said it, I just wanted to get it straight in my mind. This is the only parcel left, is single-family home. The other one, the other big one, you're already doing, correct? There's no other single-family home parcel?
I think 95% of the property that remains. So there's a small,
Where's the other single-family? I'm just looking at.
I can show you.
This big part along the river, is that your phase one?
Yeah.
That you're under construction right now?
Yeah, sorry. So all this in yellow is platted. So it's
Okay.
final platted under construction. This white
Is not.
Is not. And so that's the
Okay.
only other RMU 200 that's in the entire subdivision. So this is the issue, the place that we're talking about.
Okay.
And we're removing and that's RMU 200. This is RMU 200, and the rest of it's 300 or 400.
What are
which
those,
does-
what are the
doesn't allow
ones
us-
that you haven't platted yet? What's the proposed lot width on those?
I think it's 70 or 75.
Okay.
70, 75.
So,
Which is consistent with phase one.
okay.
Same.
Do you know how many lots are currently shown on that plan right there? In the white.
In the white.
That have not been platted yet?
So there was 200 and, I think it was 202 in the white, and the platted 99, so 100.
Another 100, okay. And the reason I ask, because I can do a quick calculation, because I am curious, that if you were to change the lots on those, okay, to 50-foot, how many more units are we talking about that could possibly be moved from multifamily to that? It's probably not too many, but I can run a quick calculation based on 75-foot lots, and there's 200 of them, so I know the distance. Multiply that out, divide it by the 50, and let's see how many lots you would come up with. Okay, so I'm gonna do that real quick, just so to get it straight in my mind. So you said 202, and you got 99, so that's 103 times, and I'm gonna say there's 75-foot lots.
Yeah, I think
Divide that by 50. So you would go from 102 to 154. It'd be 50, the potential would only be 52 lots besides the 20 they're asking for tonight, is what the maximum potential would be.
Chairwoman, could I add a comment to that?
Yes, sir.
So that 50 sounds almost negligible. It's not a whole lot compared to the total number of units
Right.
for the project. But when you look at one of the high-density multifamily parcels, some of the max units for, let's say, RMU, let's see, this is parcel number 8, the max is 148 units. So if you subtract 50 units from 148, a developer may not be as interested in a multifamily development that can not support 148 versus.
But that's,
You know, I don't agree with that, but if I had to bet, I mean, just knowing development, okay, he's not gonna walk away from a site that's multifamily, okay, because of a density cap. He's gonna come back in and ask for more density, because he
Wouldn't that-
wants to maximize the multifamily.
But
Because
that
that's what most developers would do.
But that argument goes in reverse as well.
You know?
That same argument goes in with this developer here that wants 50 lots for 65. So that argument goes both ways.
Well, it does. But you know, the thing that I guess I struggle with the most is market conditions on a 15-year-old product that we're looking at, and the market conditions have changed, and you know, if you build something that the market doesn't want, it's gonna sit, and the project's not gonna be successful.
So speaking about market
Okay.
conditions, I do affordable housing.
Okay.
And affordable housing is something that I'm very, very, very passionate about. And the city of Titusville has none at all. As I was looking at, like I said, looking for a one-bedroom, $900. And the rates are going up and up and up and up. So if we don't make concessions, if we will, for our current population, we're gonna phase ourselves out. And property prices are gonna continue to rise. Now, we know that multifamily units actually lowers price. It lowers the price of home ownership. And so I'm concerned, that's why I've asked him before about, has he considered affordable housing? And he probably hasn't. And again, I get it, it's about making money. But we have to look after everyone, not just this division, this subdivision here. So I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about affordable housing. I'm concerned about the price of homes for everyone, not just over in Tranquility, but throughout Titusville as a whole.
I agree totally with the affordability. And there's a point where impact fees and school impact fees and transportation impact fees add thousands of dollars to every home, every multifamily unit, that almost makes it unreachable to have an affordable product, okay? Unless you're in a special zone where you can get some tax breaks and get those things kill first-time home buyers that are trying to come into the market when you're spending $10,000 in impact fees for a new single-family home, or for multifamily, it's just as bad, you know? So, yes, I think there's things that we have to be creative to do to get the cost of homes and multifamily units down, okay? And if we did that and made it affordable, I think you would see a lot more construction in that market of the affordability. The problem is the affordability hasn't come down because of all those you spend so much money before you even put the first brick on the ground that it's hard to recover that. And so now you're faced with $900 rents because you have to recapture, you know, the $30,000 that you had to put in the ground before you even built a building with all the infrastructure you had to do. So, I mean, I don't know what the answer is, but boy, it's gotta, you know, it's tough.
It's
Developments are
tough. So I'll tell you, for this particular one, I actually don't have an issue with what he's requesting
Right.
as far as moving those units to, but I have a problem with changing it from parcel to project. Now that I have angst with that one, because again, it does give carte blanche from here on out if we change it from parcel to project. So I'm against that. But in this particular case, in just that zone 1, I don't have an issue with that as it stands. But I couldn't sign off with it saying for the entire project, he can just make changes as they want. I'm against that, just so that you know.
I too echo Mr. Fasom's concern, especially for a way too large percentage of our population. At this point, a teacher in the system, less than 5 years' experience, cannot afford, with a master's degree, to rent an apartment or buy a single-family home. Neither can a police officer. Those are two essential people in this community. Everyone needs to think about that. We have no teachers coming up. Nobody's there to fill our jobs. And there are plenty of babies that need to be taught. So I think that's a consideration here, and I'm not so sure I understand Mr. Allen's need to make money. That's his job. And to have a builder request a certain lot size. But I really want that multifamily unit in there just to preserve the nature of this entire development. And it was approved as mixed use. So how does the decision, staff, how does the decision for that, are you you're protecting that use by these conditions, correct?
Right, so that would protect the units that were set for multifamily, keep them within the tract.
Yeah. Are there additional cards?
Yeah.
Mr. Richardson, go ahead.
I'll ask again. I'll ask both the developer and the staff. Should we table this and let y'all solve this issue? Because at this point, I'm agreeing with Member Faison and the chairman, because I am the P&Z's representative on the Affordable Housing Commission. And that point that they're making is valid.
I would recommend that the board make a decision if you have a decision to make, unless the applicant chooses to table the item, because I don't know that staff and the applicant have anything further to discuss at this time.
So the applicant is at loggerheads with staff. Is that correct?
Well, I think that we were surprised when we saw the staff report and thought that it was, because we had discussed all this with Peggy prior to submitting it. So, I think that we were, a little surprised and thought that it must be a misunderstanding, and that the staff, whomever, I don't know if it was Peggy or someone else that wrote the actual comments in there, but, if they understood that, with the current RMU designation, so the way the property is zoned right now, we can't do what you're worried about. So even if you don't believe us, that it's impossible without coming back here.
Once this document was published, you had no conversation with the staff.
Well, Peggy,
Since Friday. Since this last Friday.
no.
Mr. Aton?
So educate me a little bit. It seems like we're spending a lot of time on the fact that the way this is written, to do what they want to do, which it doesn't seem anybody has a real problem with, of narrowing the lot size to 50 feet. The problem is with having to steal the 22 or so units from the multifamily area. What is the process if they just said, can we change the lot size in parcel 1 to 50 feet and not steal units from the multifamily? Because that seems to be what we're getting wound around the axle about here.
I think that would defeat what they're trying to do. So the whole intent is to build more homes. And they can't build more homes with the current lot size of 65. And even if they could, because of the density of 2404, they need to grab those units from someplace else. And so currently.
But my point is, we're the ones, or the city is the one that's making them grab more units. If they didn't have to grab more units, the density and the number of multifamily units getting built would stay the same.
Well, no, they'd have to increase their density. Because see, right now, they're kept at 2404, whether it's multi-use or whether it's single family.
No, that's what I'm saying, is
Right.
so the overall density would have to go up by 22 units, or even if they wanted to change the lot size in the other, go up by another 54. What is that process? I mean, of changing the density of the overall cap on the project.
I think what you're explaining is another amendment to the developer's agreement to increase the total project's cap to add an additional 20 units to the project total, so that those new units could be added to
'Cause
subdivision 1.
that gives them what they want, which nobody seems to have a big problem with of that, and keeping the multifamily the same. And if that's just as simple a process of an amendment, just like we're doing here, why don't we do that instead of this?
Is that a condition?
I just need to ask.
Or what?
Is that a condition?
Does that have to be republished and
Yeah, it'd have
re-advertised
to
and
be
all that stuff?
re-advertised, everything. How does that affect concurrency?
We would have to do a new concurrency assessment to review for the number of units that are being added. I wasn't present when the discussion was made about that original cap, and so I don't know why that number was the number that was set. So we'd have to try and find some minutes to see, some explanation for where that number came from.
Well, we felt like that was going to be much more controversial, trying to change the cap, than this. We thought, I guess, wasn't, knowing that how much land we have left to develop single family on, and knowing that we're not planning to change the lot widths on anything except for the section that we're talking about today. So I mean, if we try to bring something, deny it, please deny it, because we're not doing it. So I put it in front, tell that to council. Put it on the public record. It's not what we're doing.
And I can kind of see if he's still single family from a single family, the only ones really left would be the ones Woody was talking about earlier that are already at 75 feet, possibly wider than the market demands today, and you pull another 20 lots out of that, now they're getting up to 90 feet or however the math works out, and now those start to become unsellable. So,
Mr. Porter or City Council?
Go ahead. So, the recommendations that staff has recommended, is that a showstopper as far as you're concerned?
Well, I think that if their recommendation that we take from the other single family and move it to this single family, I think that it defeats the purpose of what what we're trying to do is have more units on the same piece of land. So we've got this small triangle piece, and we're trying to get more units on that. If we take it away from the section up by the river, then those lots will get bigger. So it's not, I guess that's not, it doesn't, the reason that we made the application, it would not, we wouldn't have made the application if that was, where we were going. So if we have to, take it from one single family and put it to the other, it doesn't, it doesn't have the effect that we're looking for.
Is that a showstopper as far as you're concerned?
Is it a showstopper?
Does that eliminate the project completely if?
Well, I mean, we have I have a contract sitting on my desk for 50-foot lots, and so I think that the other lots that are up here are 70, 72, 75, and they're all, that's I guess that's what we're engineering them currently to be. So we're in that process. So I think that we have to go back to the drawing board and try to figure out, 80, 90-foot lots or something like that, which I don't think that we're interested in doing.
Did that answer your question, Mr. Porter? Thank you. Okay.
I was just going to offer a suggestion for this board. I see that another card has come in for public comment, but on page 27 of your agenda packet, that's where you see the three subjects that are proposed to be amended in the existing developers agreement, section 1, section 2, and the master plan. My suggestion is simply that since there has been substantial conversation on these different topics, perhaps you would vote on them separately to get clear understanding from the board members to council as far as what your suggestion is for your recommendation. Just an idea, not required.
It's a positive suggestion. What other cards do we have, clerk, please?
Robin Fisher.
Mr. Fisher?
Robin
Welcome.
Fisher, 1019 Indian River Avenue, Titusville. You know, in front of this board, months ago, I made the comment to you that development is hard enough, and it's really hard to get things done. And this item came about because the applicant, and I do some consulting for him, wanted to change the density to 74 lots versus 50 lots. But they were never trying to change the whole density of the whole property, which was 2404. And the development agreement was kind of wishy-washy about the comment of, yes, you can change the density within the parcel. And then it was and that wasn't clear, so then it became, can you change the density for, let's clear it up and put the word project. And that's how the word project came. But that one issue of, they never had the intent to change from 2,400 units in the total overall project. And I can tell you from the interest that they've got on the site, multifamily is a huge request, and they will have multifamily, and it'll be a big mixed-use project. But it's very difficult if you can. We started this project 60, 90 days ago. This topic right here on these lot size, never wanting to change the density of the overall project. Just want to change that little section that's allowed to have, I think, 6.7 units, trying to go to 3.9 units. It's still way under the zoning category for that parcel. It's not asking for you to go from 2,400 units to 2,500 units. We're staying within the amount of units that you're allowed to have, but we're in the 90th day, and there's been conversation of tabling it, been conversation, and then going back to, city council, if you do that. That's why it's so hard to do anything. So I would encourage you, they want multifamily. They're going to have to, I believe, I disagree with you. I think if they change it, the density goes down, they've got to come back before this board if they go from 200 to 400, those MU classes. So the market right now is hot. It won't be hot forever. You've got people that want to buy 75 lots in this community and move families in it and help your tax base. I'm not sure. I think there's a bigger issue if you're changing density, but moving density around within the total project, it shouldn't be a 90 to 120 day process, and they shouldn't have to come back to this board every time they want to, build something that the market is demanding. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. What is the pleasure of the commissioner is looking at each of these sections, 1, 2, and 3, and making a motion for each one? What's the pleasure of the board? Any comments there? I thought that was a good suggestion.
I'd agree with that. I think we should take them one by one and not
So
as the
if
line.
you could go back to page 30, if that, needs to shake anybody's brain up, okay, because we've talked a lot about this. And look at the actual internal parcels being adjusted for total density in the project and staff's comment. Do we have any additional cards?
No.
Okay.
Chelsea, how would you phrase that? If we'd vote on every one of those 3 sections, do we
could
have an
say-
overall motion, or?
Well, you could, if you just wanted to parcel them out and have a discussion or a motion on section 1, you could say, I move to approve the recommended changes to section 1 of the developers agreement. Or I move to deny the recommended changes for section 2 of the developers agreement. And then the third would be the section called the master plan, which amends because there's those headings that describe the content that's being changed in those section 1, 2 in the master plan.
So we'd have 3 motions, not one overall motion.
That's where the chairwoman has decided to go, yeah.
Ms. Richardson, would you like to make that motion? I call for the motion on, for that motion on 9D, DA 2-2021 for Section 1 only. Do we have a motion? Mr. Charles?
Make a motion to accept section 1 of 9B, I guess, as the recommendation, or the, sorry.
I'll
Yeah,
second
just
that.
accept it, yeah.
For staff comment, as staff recommends, is that correct?
Yes, or, let's see, parcel, yeah, that's correct, yes.
Okay, is that clear? Do we need to restate that?
I'll-
Restate that, Mr. Childs, just to make sure.
Make a motion to accept the staff comments, recommendations on section 1 of 9B.
Yes, sir. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Roll call vote, please.
Member Faison?
Yes.
Member Porter?
Yes.
Member Aton?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Richardson?
Yes.
Member Childs?
Yes.
Secretary Grant?
Yes.
Chairwoman Spidel?
Yes. Moving on to section 2, again with 9B, DA 2-2021, and this is on section 2. For clarification, it is the firehouse.
I'll move to approve section 9B, section number 2 of 9B for approval.
I would second the recommendation to City Council for approval.
Roll call vote, please.
Member Aton?
Yes.
Secretary Grant?
Yes.
Member Childs?
Yes.
Member Faison?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Richardson?
Yes.
Member Porter?
Yes.
Chairwoman Spidel?
Yes. Moving on to section 3. Is there a section 3? Okay, help me on
The
here.
reference is the master plan.
The master plan, which is, tell me what page again, so I got this exact.
The master plan is on page 40. The description of what the changes are is on page 30 of 68. And
Okay,
just to be clear, that section that's being amended has two parts to it. So the first part is amending the master plan where it shows the proposed subdivision to now just show it as the overall parcel, not limiting them to the specific layout that was originally proposed. And then the second part is related to the data table, that's where staff is concerned with leaving some sort of reference to make sure that multifamily is a consideration.
thank you. Okay, as stated, 9BDA 2-2021 in the master plan.
Would it be your recommendation that we take two motions within that section?
I think the other half of it has been talked about more, and so it may be easier to make it two motions.
So you want that to be two motions too, sir?
Sure.
Okay. Do I have a motion on that agenda item?
I'll take a stab at it, I guess.
Go for
I
it.
make a motion to approve the parcel 5 of the master plan to delete the proposed layout and amend the master plan, or is that the second? Which is the first?
So the first is just to amend the parcel 5 to delete the proposed layout.
Okay, so I'll stop there, so.
Do I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Vice Chairman Richardson?
Yes.
Secretary Grant?
Yes.
Member Porter?
Yes.
Member Childs?
Yes.
Member Aton?
Yes.
Member Faison?
Yes.
Chairwoman Spidel?
Yes. There is another motion related to the master plan. 9B, DA 2-2021, master plan. You want to say B? Or second? Data table? Yes, thank you. Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the staff's recommendation for the data table of keeping the columns.
All of them?
The 2 columns of allowed density and proposed density of units per acre.
Do I have a second?
Just for clarification, so there is one correction that we, when staff was reviewing this, found an inconsistency with the comp plan, and so we would ask that your suggestion, that your recommendation include changing that section, which is the, for RMU 200.
6.7 instead of 12.
Right, it currently says its maximum allowed density is 12 units per acre, and the comp plan is 6.7, and so we request to make that change.
Then I move
Which should be included in your motion.
Yes, let's go ahead and add the staff's recommendations.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Member Faison?
Yes.
Member Childs?
Yes.
Secretary Grant?
Yes.
Member Porter?
Yes.
Member Aton?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Richardson?
Yes.
Chairwoman Spidell?
Yes. Motion passes, all in with each continued. Mr. Rice?
Now that that item has been disposed of,
Yes, sir.
how much did developers amendment cost staff? How much was this amendment, developers agreement amendment?
I don't have that information, maybe the applicant.
Do y'all know how much you paid for this amendment process?
Yeah, we paid, I think, $1,500, I think it's 15,
Sorry. Yeah, I think it was $15.75 for the application fee, and then there was
And
some
the advertising fee.
and some out for advertising.
And Mr. Fisher, you indicated that you started this process 90 days ago? Staff, can you confirm that it's been 90 days to process this?
I don't know,
You do not know?
no.
When the issue came up, and I don't know the exact date, Mr. Rice, but we went to talk to city staff and Ms. Peggy Basaka, and the conversation started out, we weren't trying to change density, we just wanted to change the parcels, and then it went to, well, you got to bring it back because it's there's confusing language in development agreement. And since there's confusing language in development agreement, you need to bring it back in front of P&Z and City Council to get approval. So I think by the time it's all done, it'll be 90 days by the time you go through council and get it all written up. But, I think the point that I really was trying to make is that it's very hard to do anything these days, and development is hard. And by the time you go through all the approval processes, you wonder why people even do this thing. And I understand about the affordable housing issue. I understand about the need, and I've been in front of this board asking about affordable housing. But I just think that you have a developer that's come to town and wants to invest in this town. As project's been trying to get off the ground for 15 years when that development agreements started, and it's hurdle after hurdle after hurdle. And
Thank you,
it's
Mr.
frustrating.
Fisher, appreciate you.
Just make,
I'm not done.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Rice, I stepped on your toes.
Well, where I'm driving, I'm struggling with all developers agreement, sort of like the CUP that we had in front of us before. Okay, when things just make sense, to make someone go through a process that's lengthy and costly, especially for, a child care facility that probably doesn't have $1,800 to spend on our process. I struggle with, why are we doing this? Why don't we make it less of a problem to develop and permit in the city of Titusville? So I'm going to make a recommendation that for developers agreement, that in order to allow an existing developer's agreement to react to a market conditions, like they're trying to react to, minor changes as indicated on the chart on 6.3.3 should be approved in the developer's agreement administratively, providing none of the comprehensive plan policies are violated and the original approval of the total density is not increased. That's my motion, that we're going to go for advisability for city council to look at ways to improve this process.
So I think that that's what the code currently says, but since the
It sure
substantial.
didn't work that way.
Right, so since the concerns about the perimeter were on the substantial side, it elevated the case to a substantial and had to be brought back to P and Z.
Part of the problem is the interpretation of the code, okay? And if there's not clarity in the code, okay, that gives staff better direction, we run into this quagmire thing where we don't have agreements anymore, and you have to keep coming back to a body like this or a body of, like city council to amend something that one administrator can interpret the code this way, and another administrator interprets it this way. So obviously there's a problem with the code with interpretation. If you have two people looking at the same code with different interpretations, two different administrators. Okay, I'm not talking about developer looking at the code and making, that determination, because developers are always going to lean toward their side, okay? But I'm talking administrators, okay? And that's the problem, that there's a code section here, 6.3.3, that says they're allowed to switch from multifamily to single family, okay? But yet, that portion was ignored, and so there's not a lot of clarity. So I'm making that motion that we get advisability to city council to look at this process, and that when a developer's agreement needs to be amended, and there's no violations, or there's none of the comprehensive plan policies are in violation, and the original density is not being changed, there's got to be a way to make it administratively available to do that instead of going back to this lengthy, time-consuming process. That's my motion.
I hear you and I understand your point is well taken. I think my point is that the clarification needs to happen on that substantial column where it says affecting the perimeter. If the commission's opinion is that the perimeter has not been affected, then the staff needs more guidance on what that section is supposed to mean. But based on the language that you've proposed for the recommendation, I think we would still follow the same interpretation that brought us here tonight.
Well, I think we're
We
getting
have a
advice.
motion on the table. Do I
Point
have
of
a
order,
second?
point of order,
Yes,
Madam
it's a
Chairman.
point of order.
Is this covering that item in general?
No, I'm talking all
We're
developers
still-
agreement.
No, but we're still on that item.
No, we're not. We just disposed.
No.
of it.
Item 9C.
No, we're not. No, we're not. We have a
haven't
new
reached
motion.
9C. There's a motion on the table
Oh,
for general
9B.
application.
9B.
Right.
We're not talking about 9B. That item has been voted upon. Mr.
Well-
Rice made a motion for general application.
We're under the agenda as published. I know you filed this, but I sense that you're trying to influence us.
The motion has
It-
already
It
been
should
made
come
and
up at
voted
the end of the
upon.
agenda.
Okay, all right. I think the point of order is that we need a second on Mr. Rice's motion. Do I
Well-
have a second?
Well, before we
Okay,
move to,
no, hold on, because something, I've been accused of something. I want to read what the state says.
We all
Okay,
have a
hold
copy
on.
of this.
If you intend to make any attempt to influence the decision prior to the meeting at which the vote will be taken, you must file this form. Exactly what I did.
We're not
Okay?
talking about that.
Point of order. You're out of line.
Do I have a second on the motion on the floor from Mr. Rice? Mr. Rice, do you want to briefly state your motion?
My motion is to allow existing developers agreement to react to market conditions. Minor changes to the approved developers agreement may be approved administratively, providing none of the comprehensive plan policies are violated and the original approval total density is not increased.
Do I have a second on this motion?
I second.
Roll call vote, please.
Vice Chairman Richardson,
No.
Member Porter,
Yes.
Member Childs,
Yes.
Member Aton,
Yes.
Secretary Grant,
No.
Member Rice,
Yes.
Chairwoman Spido.
Nope. What's the count, clerk?
4 yes, 3 no.
Okay. The motion passes. Moving on to agenda item 9C, CIA 221, update, P&C. Staff, please.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Section 163, 3177, subsection 3B of Florida statutes requires the city's 5-year capital improvements program for the capital improvements element be updated annually. All local governments are required to include a CIE in their comprehensive plan that considers the need for and location of public facilities and provides a component that outlines principles for construction, extension, or increasing capacity of public facilities, as well as a component that outlines principles for correcting existing public facility deficiencies which are necessary to implement the comprehensive plan. The planning period for this element is 5 years.
Staff, does this require a approval of this ordinance?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I need a motion for item 9C, CIA 2021, update for P&C, please. Do I have a motion?
Madam Chairman, I recommend approval of the ordinance.
Do I
Second.
have a second? Mr. Aton, second?
Yes.
Any discussion? No discuss, yes, sir. Go ahead, Mr. Rice.
Page 44, okay? I know you look at capacity of everything, but what city doesn't look at is capacity of their water lines and their sewer lines. And that was identified, Highway 50 has no development on it because there's no capacity in a pipeline, okay? But there is capacity in the plant. So when you do concurrency, everything looks great, and then you find out, oops, there's no capacity. So shouldn't we recommend that capacity of water lines and sewer lines be looked at also? Because it's still a CIP. If the capacity is limited in an area, it needs to be addressed.
Are you suggesting that the capacity should be looked at in portions of the city instead of at the overall system?
No, I think that water resource, and maybe it needs a little staff research, but I think Water Resources probably has a model that they run, and they know what pipes are currently at capacity, okay? I think they have that, okay? But be curious to see what those models say, and if there's other segments of the city, if they can evaluate it, okay, in their model and say, hey, this one's getting close to capacity, we need to look at long-term how we fix this problem, okay? Maybe we should be proactive in that, just like we are with our plants. And, you look at the capacity of the roads, right? But you're not looking at capacity of your pipes. It just seems sort of odd. It might have identified the problem on Highway 50 much earlier where the city could have reacted instead of just shutting down everything south of Highway 50, okay, on the west side and just to the north of this Antigua Bay property, because they're going out 405, the capacity.
So for the benefit of the other members who may not be aware of the issue, the city has currently issued a sewer moratorium for that portion that was described on the south side of the city because there's no longer capacity. So new development or redevelopment that's going to add additional fixtures have been basically placed on hold until the additional capacity can be installed. And that work is underway and should be completed within the next year, but it has had to hit the pause button on development.
So I just wonder why we're not looking at that. And then this report talks about vulnerability areas. But there's no map of what vulnerability areas are. I mean,
so when the city conducted the initial resiliency report, there were 2 general areas that had been identified as areas of the city that are most likely going to be impacted by sea level rise soonest, and other areas that are vulnerable to other hazards. The next step in that project is to conduct or create what the state has called adaptation action areas,
Okay.
which are areas where you identify those areas in the comprehensive plan and then create land development codes that will require that the development within those areas be built to a higher standard.
So, to sum it up, you just haven't identified, you've identified vulnerable areas, but you haven't solidified it for the CIP and your comp plan yet with these are the areas of the city that are vulnerable
Correct.
to, is that a correct statement?
Mhm.
So your statement on page 45, where you talk about sea level rise, okay? In all your CIP projects, when I went through them, nothing addressed sea level rise. But you pointed out in this report, so is that part of the study not completed yet of what CIPs will be identified for sea level rise? Because none of them identified for sea level rise.
Well, the resiliency project identified some of the most vulnerable assets that the city has, and so the next step is to include those in the infrastructure improvement projects moving forward. I don't know how to answer the question as far as.
There's none identified this year, but doesn't mean there may not be next year with
Right.
sea level rise. You haven't identified any of them, or you're saying you have identified them, but you haven't put dollar values to them yet?
Or
And
incorporated
to-
projects related to it.
Right.
Related to it? Okay. Okay, that's it. That's the only questions. I just want to understand those things.
Any other questions?
Yes, this is for staff. So mentioning sea level rise, I believe there was an image before that showed sea level rise year by year. So you guys have identified those areas. You just haven't, as Chelsea has said, you guys just haven't mentioned a project to fix it yet, correct?
Correct. So we have the Resilient Titusville report. It's available on the city's webpage. It's identified. We have several different types of maps based on the dollar amount or the dollar value of the land that's going to be impacted, the critical facilities that have been identified in those areas that are most vulnerable. So we're starting taking the first look at what assets we have that are going to be in those vulnerable areas.
Correct. So again, risk management is first identify the assets, because I believe I've seen the image of sea level rise, of what areas will be impacted first, and I believe I've seen that in some report that the City of Titusville has already published.
Mm-hmm.
Additional comments? Does this call for a vote? Yes?
Yes.
End of discussion? Okay. Roll call, please.
Secretary Grant?
Was there a motion made?
Yeah. Yeah, that was discussion.
Uh-huh.
Was a motion made?
Yes.
You made the motion.
I think you made it. I seconded it.
Uh-oh. There was a small nap, but it's over now.
That's terrible. I was feeling so good.
It was okay. It happens.
Yes.
Yes.
Member Childs?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Richardson?
Yes.
Member Rice?
Yes.
Member Porter?
Yes.
Member Aton?
Yes.
Chairwoman Spido?
Yes. Yes. Okay, excellent.
Kind of direction.
You're good. You're, you know,
Oh, you go over here, you go over there.
you're fine. You can't be perfect, otherwise you gotta go sit someplace else. Okay. So is there any comment on City Council summary of action? Staff, do you have an ending report, sir? Or
I do have one
report?
short report.
Okay.
It looks long, but it's not, I promise. This is just related to the tree ordinance. So an email went out today to the interested parties on the tree team. So I wanted to make you aware as well that council's staff is going to be presenting advisability to council to make a change, a correction to a section that has been identified with the first site plan that has come through the tree ordinance. And so that's related to the tree survey requirements. It was council's understanding that the tree survey requirements for commercial and industrial were not changing, but through the code process with as many iterations and interested parties, it was written in such a way that it had changed it to be similar to the residential requirements. And so this first applicant is an industrial development, and council has indicated that they believe that may not have been correct. So advisability is going to be moving forward. The legal ad for that ordinance is going to be very tight in order to just to affect that make that one correction, so that the discussion does not get broadened out again to opening the door on discussing all of the tree canopy requirements, as that process took us 2 years to get through. So we're not trying to undo that or, have the bottom fall out. We wanted to make you aware of it so that if you, when you see it come through, if council approves that advisability, you know what's going on, that we're not trying to rewrite the tree canopy that just got adopted. We're just making that correction.
I think all of us received an email of that from Ms. Peggy. Okay, is that correct?
Yeah.
Good, so read that, and it will be a narrow, okay, very good. Ms. Chelsea?
I have no update.
I'd like to advertise the Sustainability Action Plan Workshop, which is this Thursday on December 9th, but it's been publicized to be in City Hall. Is that incorrect? So it will be at the fire department where we have an elevator. What is the status of the elevator at City Hall?
It is incomplete.
Incomplete, incomplete status, okay. We are progressing copacetically.
That will still be,
Okay?
Will city council be here on the 14th, though?
Oh,
Sure will. Yes.
it would be
It is the
virtual, right?
No, this is in person.
No, tomorrow.
It's in person, and next week, city council's in person, and they're both here.
I thought there was one that was virtual, you could attend.
The sustainability plan tomorrow night is being presented in both hybrid, so you could attend virtually if you choose to.
Okay.
In the comfort of your own virtual
So
environment. Okay.
before we go, I have a question about, again, tranquility. I don't want to bust the sunshine, so I think I want to ask it now. And I meant to ask before they left, when you had Mr. Fisher step up, I wanted to ask him a question, which was the average cost of a unit that they're producing out there. Does anyone know what that average cost is?
No, but I'd recommend you ask them on Tuesday, the 14th.
It is the pre-holiday season. I personally would like to thank everybody for an extremely successful 2021, and thank you for your service. I don't think they gave out sandwiches. Our dinner was canceled. I didn't bake cookies tonight.
This is our last meeting.
And this is it. So this is an appropriate comment by your chair. Happy holidays, whatever you're celebrating and wherever you're celebrating it. Okay? Thank you so much for all of your work and your intelligent questioning.
Before we go, I want to also apologize for last meeting. I do want to say the reason why I wasn't here, and I hate to say this, but my son was shot that Sunday Sunday morning. So I went to Fayetteville, North Carolina, where he is, to be with him. So I do apologize for missing last meeting, but that was the reason for that.
Yeah.
Yes.
What is
well,
his status? What's going on there?
Well, he's recovering. Thankfully, they missed all vital organs and vital arteries, and so he's good. It's just a long road to recovery.
Did you do the daddy talk?
Well, so it was his friend. It was his
I
friend.
don't care who it was. Did you do the daddy talk?
I always do daddy talk.
Thank you very much.
But again, I apologize for that.
No. Let's best wishes to him.
I have
Okay.
one comment from Member Grant, too. Roll Tide.
Yes. We have an SEC champion, and I know that Mr. Richardson's wearing the appropriate colors, and I would like to go. Roll Tide. Thank
And we
you.
were outplayed and outcoached, so what can I say?
Well, what can I say? But my alma mater, University of Cincinnati, is still in running for something.
Bearcats?
The Bearcats. I am a Bearcat,
yes.
so, you know.
Well, my alma
that's
mater
it.
stunk up the place this year.
And we will affirm that.
And I'm scared to death because we're playing UCF, and they're going to kick our butt, too.
I'm afraid you're on the downturn on that one.
I'm telling you.
What's this guy's name, Billy? Let's hope Billy
Are we
does a
adjourned?
better job.
I think we're.
All right.
Ma'am?
We are adjourned. Oh, I'm sorry, everybody.